is the max that my math allows, not by comp plan, but by spatial standards.
Okay.
They don't have enough frontage to get a second base building pad, if you can follow my language, and the ordinance is fairly specific on this, to get a second 4-unit building. So I don't know if there's enough room there to actually get another base lot that would give them 2 4-unit buildings or 2 3-unit buildings. But I do believe that this site accommodates a 4-unit townhome building, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
4 was the number I looked at when I reviewed this.
Yeah.
Not 5, not 6.
No, and I will say that the conversation I had, just to be totally transparent, was with the applicant and the council was, maybe there would be an appetite for another unit or more units if it went to a single family, just given the nature of that neighborhood, right? So we don't have any attached buildings right there. And my initial reaction and conversation when looking at this lot was, boy, a side by side 4-unit townhome building in that area might just stand out, much more so than kind of a detached product.
When you say stand out negatively?
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
think it's gonna have a
okay.
different connotation than what's there, character-wise.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm not a homeowner that backs up to it, but I see what you're getting at.
I think attached or detached, they can look nice. I think the design guidelines could help improve that. You know, when I was on planning, when we discussed whether or not to change these zones to single family, we really were intentional about keeping it multi-resident to kind of allow for more housing to come in and have that transition as the gateway grows. You have the multifamily in between the single family and the gateway area. You know, we talk about wanting more affordable housing, but not necessarily income restricted. Density is a way to get that. And so I think if they're following setbacks, I support as many as they can legally and, you know, fit in there without cars, you know, driving over each other.
Well, and I like the plan, I like the design, or the thought, because these are gonna be smaller, single level. I think that's a huge, everybody out here builds these big tall houses with multiple stories and no yards. You know, and if you're of the age where you can't get up and down stairs, these are gonna be very, very highly sought after. And I like the way that they've actually thought about the design as far as keeping the trees. And I think that's gonna really help because they're gonna give some cover from the outside. One of the things that was brought up in the planning commission meeting that I thought was really neat was the way that they've already thought about the layout of the property. So some could be walkouts, and it's all based on the terrain. They've already given all that thought about what they're showing here based on what they can keep in trees and the less amount of grading that they have to actually do. So I thought that was pretty cool.
So when you say one level living and you're talking walkouts, this would be a poured pad and construction, or could they actually excavate for a basement? I don't know.
They can do basement, but the intent would be that the living is main level living.
Right.
If you get a walkout, you could have a bonus room, you could have a,
Right.
Guest room,
Right.
you can have that.
Right.
Or if it's pad on grade, slab on grade, then it's what, but in Minnesota, I mean, we do basements almost always, right? So, but the intent is the living's on the main level.
I appreciate the thought that has been put into this, and in particular, you know, the landscaping, the look of the building. I think this is something our community needs. I know one of the biggest complaints I hear about the independent living at Haven Homes is those people aren't going there because they don't have their deck or their patio. So this would be great for them. One level, no stairs. People that want to stay in the community or come out here and get started, a new school teacher, whatever. I think there's great potential with this. I too, though my gut did say 6 felt like a lot. I'm not a math genius, but that's just my gut.
But would you take 6 if the math works?
Yes,
I
if
would
you
too.
can get it to work
I
and
would
comply.
too. I just
That's
don't
why I
think-
don't wanna say
I
I'm
just don't
against
think, I
6,
just
it
don't
just-
think the math works with
my
6.
eyes, it looks like a
But I
lot.
like the concept. So I mean, if they're looking for a high level, they got my vote.
Any other feedback?
And you said one structure, there's 3 structures that are coming down, correct? The house and the 2 outbuildings?
Yeah, I said that one structure, I point that one out because in almost every scenario that I've talked to people prior to their purchase, that structure probably stays, because there's good value in it, right? But
If you wouldn't mind coming to the podium, just because our meetings are recorded, and stating your name, please, and welcome.
Sure. Madam Mayor, council members, Mr. Cultus, thank you all for allowing us to be here today. I'm John Ressler at 3683 North Shore Drive in Orno. This is Chris Ballas from 210 Kintyre, Orno. We came across this property as the people locally that live around here, growing up here, also utilizing the trails and thinking about the changing needs of our world and families and things of that nature, and also recognizing the need for added density for the reasons mentioned, among others. We thought that this was one of the fewer properties that would be more conducive to a layout like this, and still satisfying adding density and things of that nature. Some of the questions, I apologize to jump around because I'm not really sure where to start, but one of the things that is just maybe as a point of reference more so than anything else is the survey recognizes the lot to include to the center of Baker Park Road, so 1.48 acres according to that survey. Of course, the half of the road that occupies that makes it a taxable of 131 acres. When we also got into meetings to make sure that we were coming at you all thoughtfully, of course it was before the change of the zoning, so we thought asking for 6 was on the low end of the guiding at 4 to 8 per acre at a area based on that. And a lot of our, for lack of a better term, inspiration has been based on similar developments in the Twin Cities, predominantly the western suburbs in particular, how those have come together and whether that would be something that we would be proud of when it's done. I'm here to tell you all that that is what we want this to be, is something that we're proud of. We're from here. We are going to stay here. We want something to be there that makes everybody proud of that, and to showcase the access to the trails and the local restaurants and things of that nature. It is not a fly-by-night try to just chop something through. I think Mr. Cultus noted this, but in our conversation with the Planning Commission, it's important for us to be cognizant of the neighbors, adding screening to the property lines to make sure that privacy is protected and things of that nature. Whenever any sort of change happens, I think it's important to demonstrate, for lack of nothing else besides just goodwill, that there's other thoughts being considered here. And you have my commitment that that is our intentions. As far as mitigants go, the rear yard setback has a very large barn that's beautiful and old, that we wish we could repurpose. It is very close to the property line. It does not fit at all with the community as far as what's been built around it, unfortunately. But I like to, even though it would be unfortunate that it has to go, we would be improving the setback from currently 12 and a half feet and about 30 feet tall to approximately 35-foot setback, which exceeds the minimums. But it does maybe tell a little bit of the tale about how we don't want to just jam things in on the minimum setbacks. We want to make it usable for not only enjoyment of a backyard to actually be used, but also be considerate of the terrain, so we're not disrupting and clearing out all of the beautiful trees that make that lot as nice as it is. So we've tried to be considerate of all those things. Also, in meeting with Mr. Cultus, one of the comments that resonated with us is it to be more desirable to have perhaps detached villas there rather than townhomes, just by mere appreciation, aesthetics, things of that nature. Of course, that adds additional infrastructure and cost to build. In doing so, makes it harder to make a project work for density when you have those costs to build, unless you get that density. So we're kind of in that purgatory right now with that. Of course, the cost to build a shared common wall building unit with townhomes is easier and more cost efficient to do so. Same thing with single level living versus 2-story. You're adding additional square footage that's usable, but your exchange for that is massing, and that again I don't even need to ask the neighbors how they would feel about that. You know, a single level is definitely going to be more encouraged, I think, based on that. So with that being said, we just asked that there would be consideration of, you know, the recent proposed changes of the density, because of course this is kind of an in-between now, you're transitioning to a different guiding for it. Not a lot of lots in that area are conducive for multi-housing either. So in respect for not taking up all your time with filling information that perhaps you've already considered, I'll maybe be quiet and open you guys up for comments.
Any other questions or comments?
So if I can then, you know, of course, we're here to look for your feedback, so I'm not just here to hear myself talk. The consideration as far as the number of units, I know I can recognize that that's been a discussion point. And Mr. Cultus can probably better advise how this defines than I can. First and foremost, mineral rights. These are going to be lots that are owned by the homeowners. They're going to be classified as villas, which means they're not single-family lots. They're going to be villa lots. So typically what we're finding in these types of developments is more of a concentration of 0.15 to 0.2 acre lots. And again, fitting into that sweet spot of land being very expensive and things of that nature. That you get into smaller lots that are still usable for enjoyment of a backyard, maybe even putting a fence to have a dog or something like that. Whereas you don't have a common area where people are just kind of running around loose. So that was the inspiration for this. At 6 units, even at the 1.31 acre calculation, you're still talking about lots that are greater than 0.2 acres. You're actually talking about over a quarter acre lot, which is rather desirable as a single family lot these days in the Twin Cities. And so then it starts to get outside of what your definition typically is of a villa, because those lots are usually not that big. And the one reason why you're seeing that is because it becomes more expensive with the infrastructure and things like that. So again, the humble consideration that we would have is, again, I think the proper screening will be there to help support the neighbors' concerns over, privacy. We want to make sure that there is proper turnaround and access for delivery trucks, sanitation, and snowplow kind of work to be done. But at the same time, we just would love to have you consider if we can fit 6 there. I think that would help us be able to move forward with the project.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And, as we said, tonight is really just about giving feedback, and we can't make commitments in our processes that this would go through planning.
Mm-hmm.
And then the recommendation for anything would come from them to us. So, I think tonight you got the feedback I hope you were looking for, and that is helpful. And then at this point, then you'd work with our planner, Mark Cultus, and our administrator, Clarissa Adler, and go before planning, and they would bring to us a plan in hopes that we can make something work, and
Great.
it's exciting.
Mark, clarify something for me. In the 2030 plan, the density was higher, allowable density was higher in the 2030 plan than it is the 2040 plan. But the setbacks are the same. So the setbacks are the published setbacks, whether they're 2030 or 2040, are really the driving component of what can fit on this lot, correct?
It is, but within that, we do have PUD, we do have other vehicles potentially that could get us to maybe a higher density with a different product. And so that's something we could look at.
He mentioned, the road. The road has to meet minimum requirements so that it doesn't become a public safety issue, and
Right.
and fire trucks can make the corner and what have you. So okay.
Mark, do you feel like you have everything you need? And
Yeah, I
you got
feel
the feedback?
like council gave good, just high level. I think that's good, and I can work with you on kind of next steps and what comes back. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Thank
Thanks.
you for being here.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having us.
Appreciate that.
We appreciate you
Investment
guys.
in our community. Next item of business before us this evening is the downtown development, the environmental studies, and I'll turn that over to staff.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Mayor, Council. This is coming back to the City Council after being considered by the EDA. At its last meeting, this was a discussion about advancing a Phase 1 environmental assessment report for the downtown redevelopment site. As we've talked about at EDA, this particular property is required to go through an environmental assessment. It has gone through several rounds of environmental assessment, but those only last for so long before they have to be updated. We talked about the idea of just pursuing a Phase 1 if the developer comes back to the city and states that they're going to move forward with submittal of a concept level plan as well as consideration of a letter of intent. I don't think we have a status on that.
Nope, still waiting to hear from their funding partners.
So we're still waiting on that piece of it, but in any case, what we said as a staff, we'd go back to the proposers of the analysis and get some additional information, and then bring back this Phase 1 proposal to City Council for authorization based on a recommendation from the EDA to move forward with just this Phase 1. You'll see at the end of my report, I did add, I went back and I talked to Bay West, I talked to the engineer for quite a bit on this. So they had a couple of mistakes. John had caught, those and pointed those out. We discussed that there was some things that needed to be clarified in their proposal, and they submitted a revised proposal, I think, clarifying that. A wrap is a part of the proposal, so that is a piece of what they are proposing to do, which is consistent with what the other proposal had in it as well. They did say that application of the MPCA for the voluntary program, there's kind of a limited scope that was included in this and getting this site enrolled. They said they'd work with us to just get it done. They said it's not a huge effort to do that, and so I think it's something that we could get out of this scope. We talked about, is there any collection or transportation or disposal of waste material? Right now, this proposal doesn't include that, but none of that would necessarily be done in the Phase 1 piece. No major excavation would occur. And then they did rework the section in the proposal talking about the sample collection, and so they are clarifying that up to 15 soil samples are included, assuming that 15 samples need to be taken depending on what is ultimately defined under the building plans. And so that is going to be somewhat scope dependent on where and what the PCA requires us to go analyze. And then I did talk to him some more about the pit excavation. Your assumptions, John, which is they can find, is there material in the ground, debris in the ground, things like that. That is one advantage of that, so that is better. But they said that, for them to be able to go in and just kind of dig and probe in the ground, they feel results in a better kind of understanding of what's out there than just very small, singular soil probes. We're still having to do those probes. The 30 feet is something that I asked him about, and he said we need to go just below where the bottom level of the proposed building is going to go. That's all that really matters in this particular case. And so they're only proposing to go a depth below the basement elevation. So they clarified those points. I thought we had a pretty good conversation. They fully believe that all the reports are out there. They just need to be collected in this Phase 1, and then made sure they're documented, accurately from the other tank removal piece. And they would, they certainly work with us to do that if that was something we want to move forward with. So they did. I will note, I did ask them. I went back on the soil, the vapor intrusion testing. Just so they clarified, you can do a vapor intrusion testing for the PCA to meet the requirements in the winter season, so they could do it in what they call winter, and then they'd have to, by requirement, go back and do a second round in a different season. that different season is spring, or could be spring. And that's that additional price. We put in, and this was Wank's price, 8,500. He thinks it's closer to 5,000, but I just left that alone and said, in both proposals, we're gonna end up with a second round of soil sampling. That's a requirement, that's a mandatory, not a optional.
Thank you for all those follow-ups.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, we're looking for a motion to authorize staff to contract with Bay West to complete the Phase 1 environmental assessment for a cost to not exceed $2,548. And the approval to authorize the Phase 1 is subject to the Ebert construction moving forward with preparation of the concept plans and a letter of intent. We can have a
So
motion and a
moved.
second.
And then a
We have a
comment?
motion.
Second?
Second. Motion by DeLuca, second by Cahill. Any discussion, Councilmember Cahill?
Yeah, Mark, just clarify, because I had made the comment earlier this month that by picking Bay West to do Phase 1, we're basically obligating ourselves, if we get to the point, to contract with them for Phase 2 and the wrap and the whole 9 yards. But the nice thing is, we're only in for 2,500 approximately now. What financial commitment would Ebert have before we commit to the next $25,000 or, $16,000? I mean, is there earnest money that they put down? I mean, or is it, what paperwork do they put together that authorizes us to spend the next $16,000, that there would be some penalty if they backed out at that point? Or would there not be a financial penalty?
Yeah, so I think that's something we'd have to discuss. So what we had said to Ebert through this whole thing, and this is really kind of typical stuff. I mean, I'm working on a redevelopment in Watertown right now. I'm doing one in Victoria right now. I mean, these are kind of standard deal points that you have with cities. They would put down an escrow at some point in the process, usually pretty close to up front.
Okay.
Once they secure the property rights, so to speak. So once they secure that they have the exclusive right to negotiate, the exclusive right to buy, whatever that is. Now, we've never given them a written exclusive right. We've said we would work with them exclusively, but we didn't give them any kind of written, preliminary purchase agreement. We said, you guys put together concept level plans. We'll go through, develop a letter of intent, and we'll put the two together. They'll have financial deal points, and we'll have a conceptual plan to go together, and we'll present it to EDA and council and say, are we close, or is this something we can move forward with? At that point, they'd be committed to what they say is $15,000, but they'd have a little bit of skin in the game, bringing in those concept plans, and we would be signing essentially a non-binding but term sheet that lays out all the terms, with the intent that shortly after we would look to go to a purchase agreement on that property. They would then be moving forward with entitlement actions, meaning they'd be submitting for approval, land use approvals. So they'd be engaging engineering and architecture to, and then you're talking about real dollars. So there's a commitment on their end. If they were to proceed with that, then our, desire or willingness to proceed with the Phase 2, I think would be kind of, appropriate. But that's not until we get to that level. So our intent was never to say, we'll just keep going on this thing and you guys, can keep kind of sitting by the side. And we called them on that basically and said, we got to have something back. It's got to be reciprocal. We got to be partnered on this. And that's what we're waiting to
So
hear.
I don't want to call it a penalty, because I don't want to
Yeah.
be in a position to assess them a penalty. They will have accrued much costs in engineering and planning before we make that next $16,000 commitment.
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
Any further discussion or questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table to authorize staff to contract with Bay West. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Next item of new business this evening is letter D, 2022 budgets and levy.
Thank you, Mayor. Is anybody super excited to be to this point? Yeah, me too. So obviously we had the hearing last week. We had no speakers, and I provided a very lengthy presentation, so I'm not going to bore anybody with the details this evening. So I am, I've laid it all out in the resolution, what exactly we are levying. I will just note, last week I spent a lot of time on the phone with Hennepin County trying to figure out their requirements as far as the debt service and resolutions and such. So that was a significant learning opportunity, we will call it. But we've got that figured out as well. But that did kind of trigger a need, in my mind, to do a little bit more digging into and making sure that we have our debt service schedules correct, and that all feeds into the long-term plan and budgets and all of that. So just forewarning for that future discussion.
And for anyone interested, last week's Truth and Taxation meeting is on the website if someone wants the entire presentation or more detail than is already included in the packet. With that, we are looking for a motion to approve a resolution approving the 2022 tax levy and adopting the 2022 general special revenue and debt service fund budgets.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Fay,
Second.
second by DeLong. Any further discussion or questions? All right, and this is a resolution, so I will turn it over to staff.
Cahill,
Aye.
DeLuca,
Aye.
Moskowski,
Aye.
Fay,
Aye.
DeLong.
Aye.
The ayes have it, 5-0. Next item of business this evening is council reports and other business. Councilmember DeLong, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, just a lot of our regular meetings. We had an EDA meeting, and also I did attend a planning commission meeting this month as well.
Okay, thank you. Ready, Councilmember Fay?
Outside of that, yeah, Truth and Taxation, Rotary, workshops, it's about the highlight.
Councilmember Cahill?
I attended the Northwest Hennepin League Municipalities on behalf of the mayor. The topic was broadband, one near and dear to my heart. So it was interesting to hear about the flawed system that is putting in broadband. And the League of Minnesota Cities, though, is doing some great work on our behalf and lobbying to get some changes put in. So it was a hopeful meeting despite some of the flaws in the system. And then personnel also had a meeting where we discussed end of year and also had a great interview with one of our chiefs who was resigning as chief but as a firefighter for a better opportunity for himself. So all positive.
Thank you.
Nothing to add.
All right. I was able to attend the Regional Council of Mayors meeting this month, the West Hennepin Chamber of Commerce, and then Administrator Hadler and I continue to attend the potential fire district meetings. I felt like we were actually talking about something tangible at the last meeting, so that's always exciting to me. In particular, looking at the aerial trucks and how we can potentially network and partner with our neighboring communities, even without a JPA and other things. So it's just good to be in conversation with our neighbors and how we can better serve our residents. And then, as people have already noted, council's been super busy, as well as staff, with all the extra meetings. So just to thank you to everyone to that commitment and the busy time of year. And then a thank you to West Hennepin Public Safety for another great View Santa, and it seemed like a good turnout. I haven't heard the numbers yet, so hopefully the chief will have an update for us when he returns. And just want to wish everyone a happy holidays, and it's a great place to live, work, and play because of everyone in it. So let's be kind. Any other business? Yeah. All right.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion to adjourn by DeLuca, second by DeLong. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the meeting's adjourned at 8:24.
Is this for?
That didn't.
One of these days, you'll slow down
Or is that
again.
supposed to go
No.
around?
What's that?
I gave you that one.
It's on my pile, but I-
It wasn't very enthusiastically tonight. Can we turn off? Oh, yep, all right.